Howdy gang, welcome back to the channel. As you can see, I've died and gone to heaven because we're talking about angels today. No, this isn't some fancy editing that you're seeing. I just smashed the camera on my phone. So today we're going to take it to the webcam straight after this. I just want to briefly talk about angels because we've talked about yellow vaccine on the channel before, and I think this is very in line with how that deck plays, with some minor changes. But nonetheless, I fucking love playing this deck. It's so fun. Let's just get into it. I've had divine inspiration. Hating seeing Mirage everywhere at the moment? Me too. That's why I've got the absolute perfect deck to be playing in this current format. I present to you 3 Slay Angels. So it's going to be a little less of a should you play than usual. Today we're just going to be talking about core pieces, we're going to be talking kind of about deck profile, and showing you exactly what I'm running, exactly what I want to be running, all the reasons why it's really good into things like Mirage, kind of good into Nume. Things like matchups, strengths, and weaknesses are all going to be here, because it's going to be more of like a why should you play the deck. We're going to cover a lot of the same topics, but just some of these things we'll miss out on because I just want to talk about, you know, the deck as a whole. And we've already talked about yellow vaccine once before on the channel, and I think the deck is like relatively similar to how that works. But, you know, if you haven't seen that, then this will just be an interesting video to watch. So if you don't know anything about yellow vaccine, to put it bluntly, the game plan is we are a control deck. DP reduction is an insane way to be able to get rid of every single body on your opponent's board. Not many things protect against DP reduction, so it's a fantastic way to kill opponent's Digimon. And usually with the, yellow vaccine, you're kind of doing your best to get as much value out of Patamon, Heaven's Emissary, to get into a level 6 that will just absolutely block out your opponent's board. And that kind of is the same here with Great Angels. You're essentially using Patamon and Magna Angemon to freely get into first off your level 4 with Patamon, and then straight into a level 6 for a reduced cost with Magna Angemon. Both of these, you're digivolving through your security, and so it makes it a lot cheaper. So enough seeing my face, let's have a look at the core engine of this deck. Let's take a look at what makes it tick, what cards you can add, and why you'd run it. We're going to start off with Kiaramon. Kiaramon is the best egg, in my opinion, for this currently, making everything jamming so that you can swing with your level 4s, swing with your 12k, 2 checks, Seraphimon, and not have to worry about them ever, you know, dying in security is primo. It is nice. And then we just run the 5th egg, which is Cupimon. Sometimes you need to, if you haven't seen TK, this is essentially TK. It can trigger your Patamon. It can trigger your, you know, your actual TKs on the board's effects to gain all the memory. So it's kind of nice to have this. And you do need the 5th egg only for the fact that, like, we can just at some points tear through our eggs using Angemon. We're a control deck, so we expect to go into the grind. Awesome. So I'm just going to put these well over here. Beep. And then we're going to, again, start in a little bit of a different fashion. We're actually going to start with D.EN.A to begin with, right? So I've got 3 D.EN.A at the moment. D.EN.A is the bread and butter of this deck. What a surprise. It's 3 Great Angels. Plays out a level 5 or lower, minuses 7 when that Digimon lands, and then most importantly, its all turns effect is preventing all of your angels from leaving the battle area. Diminimon allows you to play out a bunch of bodies onto the field, which then allows you to sort of create this unbreakable board that is both, you know, very defensible and very offensive when it gets back to your turn. Being able to use Diminimon's secondary all turns effect to defend almost everything on board by trashing your security makes a very lose-lose situations to things, especially like Mirage, for example. Mirage wants to do its best to bounce cards to your hand, get things off the board, and then just start swinging for game. But by trashing cards to keep our stuff on the board, we're essentially just saying, no, fuck off. As well as having an extremely unbreakable board, we create blockers, and more importantly, we create targets for our aces for our opponents to walk into. This is one of the fundamental best parts of the deck. 2 things to note. One of the really important things that you got to learn very quickly is that On big instances that would pop every single one of your Digimon on the field, for example, Agudamon pops everything at once, you only have to trash one of your security to defend all of them. Because this is protecting the whole set of angels on the field, as a whole. So you only have to trash one, and like that alone makes this card very, very nice. Playing out another body, really, really nice too. What a surprise. We won't, stick too far on her. Seraphimon is, to me, the absolute secondary best boss monster of the deck. This is the best kind of loop that you can get into is going like D.EN.A effect, play out a Magna Angemon, and the Magna Angemon's effect is going to digivolve into your Seraphi for a 2-cost as well, and then you essentially have this loop where you've played out another body, made another Seraphi, -7, -7, obliterate a 14k or less stack, and you just get away with that. Plus this gets its Sec +1, which is just all around really nice. This is your aggression of the deck, and I think aggression in control decks is so important because I don't want to be sitting here for the whole 40 minutes in game 1 because I can only do 1 check a turn. So that's one of the big things that I really love about this deck is it has the aggression that I believe that a control deck needs. Because control decks that do 1 chip a turn, the moment your opponent walks out for an OTK and ignores your board, you're just going to have the worst time in Digimon. So having aggression to be able to push for game once you've cleared their board really makes the difference. Currently, I have a one-of Shadow Seraphi, which is initially was kind of funny to me to put in, and then once you find it and you get onto it, it's actually way better than I thought. So the problem here is at a one-of, it's very difficult to find it, which take with that what you will. But one of the coolest things about this card is if you have D.EN.A on board as well, and your opponent is trying to out any of these cards, when D.EN.A trashes a card, it removes it from your security, therefore you can de-digivolve in your opponent's turn. And then when they finally break through your board, and maybe, for example, they pop this, because this isn't an angel, you actually can't protect it with D.EN.A, but it's going to be the last thing that they try to kill, then you'll just obliterate whatever body they have on board, and that is nice. So that I just love this card a lot. It's very funny to do your 2 checks, it lives, and then go 1 cost into this to end your turn, and then you've got your opponent staring down the face of something that can, at any point, actually decide to de-digivolve their deck, their Digimon. Cherubimon Ace is another bread and butter of the deck. There's a lot of level 6s in this deck. Cherubimon Ace is really cool because this also helps you to clear for game. Not only are you able to explode your opponent's Digimon and just, turn them to dust by minusing them by at least 8k most of the time, 12k pretty easily. When it comes back to your turn, or if you just, hard play this for 7 and then it comes back to your turn, now you have something that does 2 checks again, and that's more aggression. Just absolutely loving Cherubimon Ace. Crazy, what a surprise. It can do Alliance, that's nice. Ofani Ace is one of for a reason at this point, and honestly, if you really wanted to, you could cut it, but it has its use case scenarios. Again, more aggression, Sec +1. In your opponent's turn, it kind of works like an Angemon Ace, so you can recover 1 when they hit the security. You -8 for on your opponent's Digimon, which is like a pretty darn high threshold, comparatively when you look at something like, -7, -7. But the greatest issue between these 3 is that because they are aces, despite their, effects being absolutely phenomenal, at the end of the day, they are aces. So you're going to have to pick and choose the correct timing to make sure that you minus your opponent by 7k or 8k or something like that, so that you can block them in their turn. And if you choose to do that over another ace, for example, like Angemon Ace, you are effectively choosing whether or not you would like to lose 7 memory down the track. The more we can do our best to avoid that, the better. But that is the nice part about D.EN.A, just doing its best to, keep us safe. And then we'll just round this out with 1 copy of Merciful Mode. Initially, this kind of hit the list as an answer to both 7 Great Demon Lords and also Numemon. But I'm finding more and more that it's actually really, really difficult to reasonably, pay the full 6, pop something on your opponent's board on SGDL, tuck 10 to the bottom of the deck, when by the time that you use this, so if you use it, if you use it too early, you're not getting enough sources to the bottom of your opponent's deck. Great, that sucks. If you use it too late, when you're popping one of their Digimon and they're at, say, 5 sources or 7, they still get to tuck something underneath, go to 6, and the best you can hope for at that point is that they had, for example, 2 Agudamon in their trash, and then you send both of those suckers to the bottom. But, that is something that you have to consider. It's very, very, very specific timing, and I think there's all of like 20% of the time where it's good into SGDL, and you need to be very, very wary of when you're about to use this. And most importantly, I need to note that playtesting a lot against one of my mates who really enjoys SGDL, he made a very good point that while I was trying to have a learning experience for myself, I went Merciful Mode over my D.EN.A, thus turning off D.EN.A's effect to defend itself and the board. And when you give your SGDL opponent 6 memory to work with, and you have a board that is unable to defend itself, explode everything. Everything is gone, especially Creepymon gets to pop this for free almost, and then they get to mill 7. What more could they want? So again, very, very specific user case scenario. I would even cut this if you felt like it, because then you free up another space to kind of give yourself that freedom to use this Shadow Seraphi. Quick little edit in here too. I think that Ruin Mode, if you can get your hands on it, is an absolutely perfect add for this deck. It is just an amazing card to keep your opponent in raising after you've blown out their board. It's great for against Numemon to just kind of burn those little guys and then keep them off of being on the board. Ruin Mode is just a really great option if you didn't want to run Merciful Mode kind of specifically. Man, this is so many 6s and 7s. I don't recommend this amount often, if not ever. So absolutely take that with a grain of salt. There is a lot of level 6s. There's a lot of level 6 options that you can run, and I definitely think it's worth kind of cutting down at least to 8, because as much as I enjoyed and did pretty darn well, recently with 10 level 6s, I think it's worth it to just decide to lower that count just a little bit, free up some spaces for some other Digimon or options even. So again, this isn't a deck profile. I just want to show you some core engine pieces very quickly, and then we can talk about some other stuff to do with the deck. If you want to play with this exact list, I've been really enjoying this one. I think there's some cards that can shift around a little bit. I just want to talk about a lot of these cards and what you can put in, what you can take out, and their case scenarios. So go have fun at your locals and enjoy this. Make your opponents suffer a little bit, honestly. But I think there's a lot of room for improvement here, and we're going to talk about that in a second. I'm going to talk about a lot of the matchups and the difficulty curve and the I hate to talk about accessibility specifically with this and a lot of yellow decks at the moment, because they're just this is not a very accessible deck for newer players, but I still think it's worth just talking about the deck as a whole, just because it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, let's walk back down the list again. So Patamon, again, an absolutely necessary card for this deck. Unfortunately, being an SR from BT14, sometimes it can be a little bit hard to get. That's what we talk about with accessibility in this deck for newer players. Finding a lot of these pieces can be a little bit difficult. But mostly important thing about Patamon is the fact that he kind of accelerates your game state just so much faster than a lot of other rookies can. But I think that a lot of people forget the fact that without the TK setup, you are essentially gambling if you just walk him out with no setup whatsoever. And if you whiff and you don't have a level 4 in hand, or you don't have the memory to get into your level 6 because you decided to push up a little too early and you, again, missed your level 4, all of your game plan just completely falls apart. And that's the kind of trade-off that you need to make. You have to set up for this card. He is, if he hits, which we can, guarantee with TK, he's just absolutely insane. Luxmon is really nice as a searcher, I guess, but just as of seeing a couple of other lists, I decided to cut it down to 1, because despite being able to grab 2 Digimon, a lot of the time, the best thing that we need to find is just our tamers. These tamers are phenomenal for the deck. And then, of course, if you want to, you've got, Pillowmon to stop your opponent from playing effects. There's so many Digimon decks out there that do that. Play for your locals. The Kudamon here is absolutely sick because you get to, search for that tamer, search for the vaccine, which all of these cards are, except for Shadow Seraphi, which, again, is a notch to him being in the deck. But Kudamon I'm really liking. This is the only other good Patamon. So, it is what it is. He's, you gain a memory when you minus something down to 0, which sometimes makes, getting into your level 6s a lot easier. But, this Patamon just does the same thing for a lot less. And just one other thing with this Patamon, the reason we run this is because we have so many Angemons in the deck that are having their Digivolution cost reduced down to 2 for Digivolving into a Patamon. So by running a way heavier vaccine, like yellow vaccine package, you can just omit this Patamon and play something like Salamon, for example, more of the Kudamons, and then you can run the Gatomon, which allows you to have even more memory gain. It's kind of, your choice on what the rookie is so that you can run a different level 4 lineup or kind of vice versa. Pick and choose whether or not you want to go with trainings or memory boosts. I think both are valid. Personally, I'm running with the memory boost just because sometimes you gotta hard drop one of these aces. And on the other side of that coin, sometimes you need to find one of your Digimon pieces, so searching for is way, way more important than just a simple 2. But then I kind of have to contend with the fact that not 30 seconds ago I was saying that I was running Kudamon specifically to find tamers, so kind of pick and choose what you feel like. Heaven's Emissary, I think, is totally worth a second spot if you wanted to add a second one. This card is broken if you set up your security kind of perfectly, because, if you can go TK, put a Magna Angemon into security, and you know that you have a level 6 in security as well. You go Pata digivolves into a level 4, and then you just go Emissary digivolves into that level 5 for free. Magna Angemon is just going to digivolve into D.EN.A or Seraphi for a reduced cost of 2, so all in all, 3 costs to go from a rookie to a level 6. So an important thing to talk about too is, because I wanted to kind of keep it in theme with the fact that this is 3 Great Angels, and this is more or less a Angemon deck. I did run all of the Angemon that I could, just to make the Magna just a little bit cheaper, because paying 4 can be a bit rough for it. But that being said, you actually do not have to run any of these Angemon at all. I want to say, off the back of that this is a absolutely phenomenal card. This is going to help you the most out of all of these cards, probably besides Diminimon, my queen, in your SGDL matchup, because you're able to, swing, it dies, you loop back into your hatching area, have 1 extra security. If you go Patamon again, then this is a card that is, ready in your security to do that once again, over and over, because SGDL really thrives on your opponent having something on the board to pop or delete or interact with, and we just want to get those chip checks in and ignore what they're doing completely. This was probably like the most recent ad, only for the fact that I found these guys just to be pretty piss at 3-ofs. So in dire situations, if you've got that insecurity and you walk out with your Pata, you're just recovering 1 when you go into your next Magna. Gives you another target to look for, hopefully, if you're gambling. But this is a nice card. Sometimes you can bounce the Ukos and Floodgates with his when attacking effect as well. So it's actually way better than I thought it would be, because I kind of expected to, digivolve into it for 3 and then be like, damn, this shit kind of sucks. But even at that 3 cost, a lot of the time we're just ignoring paying for the Digimon. The barrier one is sick, gives you that free check if you didn't get jamming. This one is cool when, again, if we're going for, against Angemon, we can walk out, digivolve into this, swing. He lives, that's crazy. Sometimes with this and Patamon, you're going to 4 memory, so you just hard play this, unsuspended again, go crazy on your opponent, one more time. And of course, you're probably maybe looking at this list and thinking, why no Magna Angemon if we are going for the Angemon sort of tribal line? Unfortunately, I just find the Angemon Ace to just be 100% better. I initially thought that this card was going to miss the recovery and I'd lose Seraphi trigger, but most of the time you're fighting for the board already when you hard play this, so it's worked out really well for me. It's really nice that the minus 6k DP is until the end of your opponent's turn too, which is a huge amount. So when they inevitably attempt to swing back, you can ace their even 13k DP Digimon again for that last few KDP to just like round out that burn. This is way better than I thought it was going to be. And obviously being an angel, they're going to have a really hard time trying to out this card before they swing so you can ace into it. I think that Magna Angemon is like a good card, but from behind it just gets worse once you only have, for example, 2 security left and he's just minusing 2 on something for the turn, which is just not good enough a lot of the time. So again, that's pretty much the list. There's not a hell of a lot more to talk about like with this, but there's a lot of really niche interactions that we could talk about, which we'll get into in a second. But I also really want to talk about a lot of other options that you could run in the deck. All right, I do want to talk about some other options that you might want to consider playing in the deck, only for the fact that I'm rambling now and it's only going to get worse. So I hope you enjoy listening to me just go. First off, let's talk about Toko. Toko, if you're really finding that you're struggling to find any cards, you can totally run this card and I think it's fine. The Jamming Kiaramon is by far and above the best like card you can possibly be running in this deck, in my opinion, because you're really not the biggest Digimon at 12k. Everything else is massive in this format, so you might as well, you know, keep your stuff safe while you're trying to check. You never want to lose your board because your board is by far and above just the most oppressive thing once it starts. And sometimes you might swing and then they have just a 16k Agudo and you die. So jamming is just, you know, it's crazy in blue. Why can't it be crazy in yellow too? If you get to proc it every time, just go off. But the extra card draw for this is really nice because sometimes you are playing with only 4 cards in hand, which again, phenomenal against Mirage, but not great when you're not seeing exactly what you need. And part of the learning curve of this deck is making sure that you know when to put what in security, and if you make the mistake of putting too many things that are very necessary pieces into your security, then sometimes you can kind of fuck up your hand. Security is your second hand in this deck, but yeah, again, you gotta approach that learning curve, which is a little bit difficult. Ukomon is kind of bait in this deck. I thought for a little bit that it would be really nice because I couldn't find like another rookie that I liked having. So I found, I was like, oh, just let's run a couple Ukos, see if we can, you know, get away with it, get our tempo going much faster. But unfortunately, you're very much more slowing your deck down when you walk out with Uko, you hatch again, you Digivolve again, but your opponent gets on board next turn and gets to go absolutely buck wild. So the search is minimal compared to, you know, just being able to have pattern raising, keep setting up, and the moment that they walk out, then you can walk out and just obliterate whatever it is that they have decided to, you know, move out. You can be a lot more reactive when you want to be than, you know, forcing them with Uko. Same with the gain 1 memory Uko. We're already gaining enough memory. It's kind of irrelevant and unnecessary. Then we get onto Gatomon here. So this is what I'm talking about when I say we're getting a little bit closer to Yellow Vaccine when we start walking over to these cards. Because Gatomon was one of the first cards I really tried to add to this deck because I wanted Barrier as an inheritable. Because when you look at the deck objectively, you think to yourself, okay, well, you know, we have a bunch of blockers that are able to, you know, block these massive bodies. But the problem that I initially thought was there, a weakness of the deck, is if I block with, you know, my level 6 Seraphi, he's only got 12k, so he's going to die most of the time, and it's not very good. But if we have Barrier, then we'll be able to trash our own security and save him and, you know, freely kind of protect ourselves with Barrier. And also protect ourselves from opponents swinging at security. This is, unfortunately, now, as of playing the deck a lot, in my opinion, not the case. You almost always want to be doing your absolute utmost to play out a level 5 or a level 4 with your other Digimon, just so that you can, you know, stare at your opponent, and then the moment that they swing, go ace, minus their DP down 6, 8k, 7k, and then either they die because they just got burned, or you get to block and they're only 2k. This is fundamentally just the best part about it, is that interactivity kind of allows you to just decide when you want to block and if you want to block at all. But if you want to go closer to a yellow vaccine route, I actually just think this is really good for even more, memory gain, because you go Pata, gain 1 off Pata, gain 1 because she sees herself being removed from security. It's pretty cool. And I also want to tie that up with Gato works really well with Revelation, which we'll get to in a second. But Magnangemon, again, I talked a little bit about it already. He's, he minuses 1k for each security card. This can minus 7 or, 9 sometimes in your games, but more often than not, he's going to minus 2, 3, and you get minus 6 always on Angemon. So the consistency just feels so much better to me. It's nice, it's alright, but I just think that Angemon is just better. And then let's just get straight into Revelation. I want this card back in my deck so badly, and I'm probably just going to find space for it because, man, being able to, with one of these Karis, you search your security stack, you play a level 4 out, and then you shuffle up again, and then you get to place this on top of the stack. Things like Numemon or, a smaller body Digimon from Fenriluga, those are all going to get absolutely effed up by the security effect of this, which is all of your opponent's Digimon and security Digimon get minus 5k DP until the end of your turn, which is so good because it's just a mini ruin mode that they have to walk into at some point. Granted, you will be searching your security stack and reshuffling it so many times that sometimes it'll get, mixed up from the top. But even then, at some point they will hit it. And if they're trying to be safe and just chip away, they just gotta either be safe or crash and overcommit to a card that will ruin mode them. And then, obviously, by trying to add Revelation into your deck, you'll have to choose between which Kari you like. And it's kind of a difficult one because if, from the list that I've seen, if you're removing 2 of your Tamers from your stack, you're always keeping your best TK, which is the 3 cost, and removing the 4 cost TK. So then comes the question, do you want a memory setter still that does the same thing that your TK does, which is, every turn you're getting more memory off of this Kari when you add things back to your security? Or do you want something that, this also memory sets, but when an effect kind of removes a card from your security stack, you can suspend this to sec -1 one of your opponent. I personally have a hard time picking either of these. I kind of like this one more so only for the fact that it interacts with your opponent's board a bit more, and sec -1 things can really make or break a game. But a lot of the time when we do remove something from our security and we're going all in on our board, we are just minusing DP on our opponent's Digimon into oblivion. So it's kind of, pick and choose, figure out which one you like more. I would just playtest and find out. I think both of these have very good value between them too. So yeah. And then last but not least, quickly, Heaven's Judgment. It's absolutely broken. If you're a newer player or casual, this card minuses 6 on a Digimon of its own trigger, and then for every other color Digimon that you have on the field, for example, if you have, a Fani Ace, she's a red and a yellow, you go red, yellow, and this. So it's minusing 18k, which is, just so much DP to be reducing, and more importantly, this triggers individually, so you can pick 3 different targets for 6k, or you can just, send one thing into God's heavenly gates. Now, I do really want to quickly talk about Descent of the 3 Great Angels. I don't think that this is a very good card. I don't know if that's a disagreeable opinion for most people, but specifically for this deck, if you're losing your board on the field, if it has Diminimon, for example, if something dies, being able to play out a Digimon from your security without paying the cost is more often than not negligible. The only best case scenario that I can see this play out being good is playing out Cherubi specifically, because Cherubi gets played out and then plays another body, and then you get to minus at worst 4, at best 8 when they're killing your board. So it's kind of, it's a 5 cost do not enough, in my opinion, when there are cards like Revelation of Light or Heaven's Judgment that just do so much more. You don't want to be so reactive that you're hoping that your opponent kills one of your Digimon and also hits insecurity so that you play something out. Sometimes they just hit your security a bunch of times and then you're at 0, and then if they kill your board or something like that, then this is essentially just a useless card. Sure, it's 5 cost, recover 1, but I just don't think it's I don't think it's good enough. That's the that should have been this entire thing. I just don't think it's good enough. So now that we've talked about the deck as a whole, let's talk about more specific things like matchups, meta relevance, the strengths and weaknesses of the deck. But we're kind of going to go through this really quickly, really briefly, less of like here's a huge piece on exactly what this is. I just want to talk about the deck, so thank you for watching as far as you have. If you really enjoy the kind of informative content that I'm trying to do for like Digimon TCG, I'd appreciate a like, even a subscribe. But yeah, so let's just get straight into that part. One of the best parts about this deck is that it's so swingy. You're able to absolutely crack back if your opponent has created a board. You're absolutely able to create huge amounts of aggression with the Digimon that you have at your disposal. And most importantly, you're really, really able to defend yourself from a crackback. Digimon makes this deck super unoutable, and a lot of the time they're going to flounder around, trying to bounce you to your hand, or, delete your Digimon, and you just say, nah, I don't think I will. What are you going to do now that you're out on board? Because next turn I'm going to, turn your Digimon to dust again by minusing another 7,000, 20,000 DP on things, and there's just so many tools and options that you have at your disposal to play with. But moving into like meta relevance, again, I started this video out talking about Mirage specifically, and we're kind of blending matchups and meta relevance together here. I really think this is a really good deck that, specifically into things like Mirage. If you really fucking hate playing against Mirage, or if you're just so tired of it, this is the deck to crush Mirage. Again, we're only running Kyoramon for jamming. We don't draw cards. We're playing with a 4-card hand most of the game, and then just as importantly, we're putting a lot of our cards into our security to use as pseudo second hand, which means that a lot of the time they don't get to, hey, how many cards do you have? Oh, I have 4. So they don't get to be swinging into your shit 20 times. And you're able to actually establish your board first. You don't have to worry even a quarter as much about, oh, if I move out too early on tempo and then they decide to, raise their Mirage, that they're gonna bounce all my stuff. Nah, D.EN.A just says no. You just trash your cards and protect your board over and over again, and because they're only ever committing to 1 stack, you're able to just say, well, you're going to be off tempo for a turn. My board of 3 Digimon is going to stick around here. So coming back to my turn, we're going to minus 12k DP on your Mirage. I'm not drawing any cards. Say goodbye. It's so easy into Mirage. This is a horribly difficult matchup for you. And then Nume is kind of a difficult one because we have a lot of blockers on field, but they also contend with, doing their DP reducing, which we can't defend against, obviously, but it's Nume. It's just, if you're not tired of playing against Nume at this point, it is what it is. But, if you're able to Merciful Mode, put all their stuff to the bottom, that's nice. If you're able to just keep, your board alive for as long as possible, you can out-tempo them. There's a lot of ways to beat Nume, but again, statistically, Nume is the deck to beat at the moment. SGDL, already talked a little bit about that in the earlier deck profile kind of section of this, and I just think that it kind of has a 50-50 on both ends, and sometimes you see the pieces that allow you to loop and do these little checks and then create a board that is unbreakable when Nagudo comes out and swings and they trash all your security, but you get to keep your board because you didn't need to, defend yourself, and then you can block with something. There's a lot of ways to protect yourself against their final push, so I think it's got good legs into SGDL if you enjoy that, and I think it should, because, oh man, as an Angels player, it's a legal requirement that we hate SGDL. I don't really, but I have to because I'm playing Angels. And so that's just a couple matchups that I think like really kind of exemplify the deck's, you know, strength in the meta. I think there's a lot of other decks out there that could really fuck on this deck that I haven't thought about too much. I took out Heaven's Judgment because there were no Tyrants at my locals, and I was the Tyrant player for the longest time. But, you know, knowing that, I think that, you know, the Digimon already do a good enough job on their own, so you don't need Heaven's Judgment if you know you're not playing against Tyrant. But, you know, play to your locals. Think about, you know, why you'd be running Heaven's Judgment specifically. Magna's an interesting one because we can really keep our board alive and block and, you know, defend ourselves. So Magna's there. Magna's always there. So that, I mean, that's matchups. That's a real quick one. The strengths and weaknesses of the deck is a really important thing to talk about here. Again, we got big weaknesses in the deck. No surprise. First thing that comes to mind, obviously, is aces. We run a lot of aces. And despite having a lot of protection to defend ourselves from popping, leaving the battle area, it is really important to note that if you go hard play your Angelmon ace, obliterate something, and then they swing, you go into your Cherubimon ace, you are going to get fucked up when they decide to use an option to pop that stack, because now you're just giving them 7 memory for any thing. And there's a lot of things like source stripping, or, you know, they pop your ace and they're just gaining free memory. I think nowadays that is the absolute biggest cost of aces just in general. It's their phenomenal effects. They are come out of nowhere. Your opponent has to play around them super heavily, but like the reward often outweighs the risk, and I think it's super worth it. But you just got to make sure you're doing it correctly. Don't walk into your opponent doing something that you think is silly and then they just get a free 7 memory. I mean, that's a big weakness. Another big weakness to talk about really quickly is just that, you know, it costs a lot to Digivolve all the way into your 6 and then loop through Magna, because, you know, you're still paying for your level 6, the extra 2 cost. It costs 3 to go into your Magna Angemon. And then you play out another Magna Angemon, and then you're going to pay another 2 to go into another level 6. So it's kind of, you know, is your board at the end of this going to be worth the 7 memory that you want to pay for it? And you can loop again, play another Magna out going into your Domini. Do the loop again, play another. Could cost 9. So again, you got to not overcommit too much. You got to think a lot about what your whole play is, why you're making such a big board. And yeah, you know, paying a lot of memory can really fuck you up when you go overboard with it. So it's really worth it to just kind of keep that in mind. And then obviously off of playing by effects, you know, having things like Pillowmon out, your own, or your opponent having other Digimon that say, little Floodgate rookies that say can't play Digimon by effects, or, you know, Crimson Blaze hits the board. It's really important to note that, you know, your combo will be a lot less explosive. But sometimes you just have to get started on that combo. One more huge weakness that I gotta talk about, completely independent from everything here, is the deck, because it's a control deck, is a little bit slower than most of the others, but just as importantly, your opponent is going to play a little bit slower than usual. But again, because we're seeing a lot of draws and kind of, you know, it is really important to note that you have got to know this deck absolutely through and through, because you want to make these plays as fast as possible, so that when your opponent starts thinking a little bit too long on whether or not you have the ace, or, you know, what you're going to be doing in your next turn, or can I clear the Domini and clear your board, that will take them a long time to think about. And, you know, you just got to make sure you push them on that, unfortunately, because you've got to be making your plays. Sometimes your combos can take a long time. Again, I understand that the game is getting way more complex, but... And just one more thing on that. To clarify, I'm not saying anybody slow plays. Again, I just really think that the game is getting much more complex, and people who aren't super invested and super, like, knowledgeable about every card and what's happening are going to tend to take a little bit longer to play. And that's not to say that they are slow playing. Strengths of the deck, I think I've been talking about that since the beginning. It's, you know, obliterate your opponent's Digimon. whenever you want to. You know, you have so much value from both the TKs and the patters. You have a lot of searches. You're essentially using a second hand with your security, which is so useful, but it is a huge difficulty curve to make sure that you're remembering what's in security, and you know ahead of time why you're putting the next card into security, because if you start putting the wrong cards into the security at the wrong times, you're really going to feel it a turn or two later, and you'll just be sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, why did I do that? Yeah, and I mean, those are excellent strengths. Oh, and the aggression. You know how much I love aggression in a control deck. I think it's so necessary. You can't expect to just keep chipping away one check at a turn and expect to win, because a lot of the decks in Digimon are just OTK decks. And finally, of course, difficulty. Man, this deck is difficult, and I think that's just Yellow Vaccine as a whole. Yellow Vaccine, again, like what I was talking about a second ago, is despite having a second hand in security, you got to have a perfect memory of what's in security. You've got to make sure that what you're putting into security is important enough that it's not going to be relevant 2 turns from now, and make sure that you know what is going to happen, you know, a turn from now or 2. So it does also kind of rely on knowing what your opponent does, what their deck does, and I think it's important to note that although not super high difficulty, it's not a combo deck. You know, making sure things are going smoothly, when to set up, when to stop setting up, when to react, when to be aggressive. All of those are very, very important things to know about any deck, but just as importantly, I think they're more accentuated on this deck specifically. Okay, so that was a lot of yapping about a deck I really enjoy. I'm kind of hoping that, you know, if you don't actually ever decide to play the deck, at least you'll have a baseline of what it does and how it works, so that when you play against it at your own locals, if you're a casual player or, you know, you're just having fun, you're newer, you'll know how to play against it with your own deck. You can probably tell I was pretty off script for this one. Sorry, but structure is not always my middle name. I'm loving Angels right now, but I've got a few other hyper obsessions that I'll hopefully talk about in the future. Thanks so much as always if you're this far into the video. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.